Alright, this is going to be step one of the scissor lift. I've got all the parts pre-printed and I've sanded them down to make them all nice and neat. I did not build this thing with any tolerances, so everything butts together in the model. I did that on purpose so that you sand it down to fit however you wanted to, as tightly or as loosely as you wanted to. And also, I don't know what printer you have. My printer may be at a different tolerance than your printer, so sand it down. The sander that I use to sand this stuff is, here's the sander that I use. It's from Great Plains. It's the best sander I've found. You can get sandpaper from Harbor Freight and use 3M sticky glue to glue it on top. Great sander. Make sure you get one of those. I have the link in the notes. First thing you need to do is we need to solder on the wire onto one of the limit switches. This is the limit switch closest to the servo, and you'll have to bend this part down a little bit as well in order to get it to fit, because I went through a bunch of different versions of this in order to get it to finally work. I got it to work and I said the heck with it, I'm done designing. So this is that piece fits on right here, and it's a pretty tight fit. It fits on right here. This piece fits on right here like this, and it's a pretty tight fit between the servo and that. So we want to put that in first. I use silicone wire, silicone covered wire, because it's easy to strip. I can just use my fingernail to strip it off, and makes it very fast. It's also very flexible, lasts a long time out in the sun as well. So we need to solder that on. If you have a hard time soldering, it's probably because of your solder. You need to get really good solder, and I have a link to that as well. This is 60-40 solder. It has lead in it, so you don't want to be sniffing the fumes very much on this. Sniff something different, and you'll be happier. Also on the solder, I have my soldering station. I'll show it to you here. I have on my soldering station this little thing. This is great for cleaning the tip. I didn't think it was going to be that great, but it is. I don't use the sponge anymore. I just use that. So you dip it in a few times to clean the tip. Soldering iron here. There's some solder on it. I need to tin this thing to make it so that it works. And I'll just use the bolt that we're going to use later to prop it up. And away we tin. Ta-da! Tinned. Alright, now we need to stick this through the hole. Or close enough so that we can see it through the hole. And I want it so that it's the number side up. There we go. And then we'll solder that into place. And just throw some solder in there, move that around a little bit, lift it up, let it cool, give it a good tug. We're good to go. Alright, that's the only soldering we need to do in step one. You can turn your soldering iron off. So the servo mount. This is the servo mount. We're going to drill 4 1/8-inch holes. So an 1/8-inch drill bit. And you're just going to drill these through here to clean these up. I've already done it once. That's why it's going through nice and easy and clean. Because we want this. This is going to fit on the rails here. And we want the bolts to go through very nicely and snug this into place. We didn't drill this first, then it's going to tap through here, and we'd have to strip these, and it's just a pain in the butt. So drill those first. Makes it easy. Those are the only holes you're going to pre-drill on this. All the other holes here are going to get tapped by the screws as you screw them in. So we want to put the switch on. Now the servo is going to mount to the back here. Here's the servo. It fits in pretty snugly like this, and this switch is going to fit like this against it. Okay, put that away, and we want to use M3 by 16. And how we measure these things is we get our nifty digital calipers from the Harbor Freight. Everybody loves Harbor Freight. You know, they're having a sale today. I can say that because they have a sale every day. Alright, and let's see, I think these are close. These are 10, so that's not it. These are probably them. These are the 16, so you measure it that way. It's the length of the thread, or the shaft. So we need 2 of those and 2 washers. Washers you want shiny side up. See, there's a shiny side and a dull side. You want it shiny side up because it looks better. We got our 2 16 millimeter M3 16s, 16 millimeters long. Those will go through here. Actually, no, we don't need the washers. Never mind. So we got our 2 M16s. We'll put them in there. I already built this once, so they. And on my finger, I have a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench driver, or hex driver, or whatever you want to call this thing. You want to get a good one of these. Don't use the cheapy hex wrenches you get from Harbor Freight or anything. This one you don't want to skimp on. You want to get a fairly good one. I have a link to that in the notes. So you'll screw that in. It's going to be a little tough to get started on that. You just want it to be snug, because this strips very, very easily. If you strip it like I have done, you're going to have to do one of 2 things. You're either going to have to reprint the part, or like I've stripped these, you just put a little bit of Gorilla Glue, the brown Gorilla Glue in there, and then use a toothpick. I have one. Use a toothpick to put it in, and then round it through like that, and then let it fully dry, because you don't want to glue the screws in. And the Gorilla Glue, the brown Gorilla Glue, it expands as it dries, and so you get a good snug fit in there again. If this is your final one and you want it out there, like I'm going to have this on the Rover for a while, it's going to be out in the wilderness, I will probably reprint this part. I'm going to reprint it anyway in PETG. This is printed in PLA. PLA is going to melt. PETG will not melt in the desert sun. So, important safety tip there. So, if you strip it, Gorilla Glue it. So I've got that done. I've got the switch mounted, ready to go. Now we're going to build this part. This is the lower servo mount part. So this is the lower part where the bolt is going to go through. So this actually attaches to the servo horn, the metal servo horn. You want to use a metal one. Don't use the plastic one that comes with it. So that'll mount to there. And you're going to drill these holes out, all 5 of these. Not these 2, just these 5. And then that will mount nicely to the horn. So the 4 on the outside mount to the horn, and then the one in the middle actually mounts to the servo. You're going to use, I think they're 12s, but I don't think 10. No, these are, you're going to use these kinds of bolts. I use the button tops for these. And these are, I believe these are 12s, but let's double check. These are, yeah, these are 12s. So you use 12s. Put those through because I pre-drilled that. They slide right in. You may have to trim the larger holes to get it to fit better. And then this will slide in and then attach the servo horn. Oops, those need a 2 millimeter. I need a 2 millimeter one for that. So we'll screw that in with the 2 millimeter. Yours may or may not go in as nicely as mine. I've done this 4 times with these parts, so mine go in quite nicely and easily. Okay. And then this is going to attach to here. Doesn't matter where it lives on here because we're going to run the servo in continuous mode. This is a Lobot, L-O-B-O-T, LX16A. You can get these servos from Amazon or from Banggood. I've been getting them from Banggood lately because they're cheaper there. A lot cheaper. And so that's the servo we're going to use. And then you're going to use a 10 millimeter. Let's double check that. A 10 millimeter screw in there. I'm using this stainless steel because that's the kind I have in this size. It really doesn't matter. It can be the black one. And that will screw in there. The 12 millimeter may or may not work depending on your plastic, how you printed it. But that'll get that in there. The next part is, will sit right on top of here, but we don't put that in quite yet because we need to get it in the mounting bracket first. So we'll set this aside, but we'll get this, we won't get that ready to go yet. We'll get this ready to go. We want to put the servo in, and then the servo back plate fits in just like that. And there's 45 millimeter bolts, long bolts for that. And there are washers that go on the end of that because that makes it look nice. So this will sit right in and go in, and it's got a little bit of play, not much, just a little bit, you can see. I did have to clean up this top part right here to get it to fit nicely. And that'll go in like that. Your bolts that you get, you want to get, I have a link to those, and they're from something. You can either go to McFadden Dale if you have one of those in town, or the link that I have on the place, which is McMaster Car, and I buy them in 100 at a time because 100 of these is about $7. They're not that expensive, so get a bunch of them because you'll be building a lot of cool stuff if you like building this. Get this solder out of the way, I don't need it anymore. So make sure your soldering iron's off. And we'll put these on. La-di-da, la-di-da. And this one. And I'll need my 2.5 millimeter for this. So put that in, put that in. These are all M3 bolts for the entire project. And then these screw in. And you want to get them in snug. Don't over tighten these. You'll be sad because you'll either have to use the Gorilla Glue trick and wait, or you'll have to print out another one and wait even longer. Alright, I sped up that video so you didn't have to see the pain of me screwing that together. Alright, so now we got that. Now we're going to put the next part on, which is this. This goes in here like this. And I did sand this bottom part, and I did sand this piece here so they fit nice and snug. Probably want to sand them before you put them in here, but that's alright. Cut the red wire first, right? Alright, so this is going to fit in here, and this is going to go in fairly snug. Okay. You may have to cut it down a little bit with a knife to get it to fit nice, but it goes in quite snug. If you want to use a 5/16 inch shaft or rod instead of this bolt, you can, because I made this part right here fit so that this will screw in nicely and self-thread inside. So if you want a little bit more travel, you can do that. And you can do that by adjusting where it sits on the base. I have it going so that there's 3 open. So you can put it right there so it's fairly flush. But you can move it all the way back here if you really wanted to. These are adjustable. This is part of the the new Mojave Rover build that I'm doing, where I'm doing everything in parts that you can build it however you want. Because I've got tired of printing and reprinting, so I just started printing out these kinds of parts. Alright, so that's going to go in there. And then I'm going to use these bolts. I think these are the ones I want to use. Yes, those are them. And those will go in, and you need washers for those. So what kind of bolts are those? Glad you asked. Those are 40 millimeter bolts. I have a lot of different size bolts, as you can tell. But that's okay. So these will get washers on them, silver side up, because it looks better. Shiny side up, that is. This will go in here. Nice and neat. I made some of these as well. You can use M3s for that if you wanted a set screw in there. That's good if you are using the rod instead of the bolt. But see, the washer fits that pretty nicely. And it keeps the bolt in place. So then this goes in here, like so. And then these get screwed in. Alright, you have to do it in this order because see these washers here, they won't fit through this big hole where the servo is, unfortunately. So you have to do it in that order for it to work. And the servo should move. And that is that piece. That piece is done. That is the servo mount and drive assembly. Step 1A.